Hey all, thanks for joining. This is the all remote group conversation. I'm Darren Murph, head of remote at GitLab, and I'll let Jessica Reeder introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Jessica Reeder. I'm the All Remote Campaign Manager.
Awesome. So I have linked these slides in the pre-watch video over in Slack. And so I will jump into the group conversation agenda. Looks like Simon is up. Would you like to verbalize the first question?
Why not? So in your slides, you talk about a Coursera course, which is how to manage a remote team. Can we take that course? Are we actively encouraged to take that course? And if so, is it free to us?
Love the question. Yes and yes, and maybe there's a third yes in there. So we would absolutely love for GitLab team members to take the course. It is totally free to complete for everyone in the world. At the very end, you can pay for a certificate to share on social that you completed it. And to address the question of can GitLab team members receive this? Yes, you can. I've linked a handbook page in the agenda doc on work-related online courses and professional development certifications. It explains the process there for reimbursement. Jessica, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I'll just add that the course was developed based on our handbook. It's drawn from the GitLab handbook, and it's also drawn from the immense library of content that Darren has developed. And it's led by several people from the GitLab team. So we tried to pull in a cross-functional group representing different teams. So you'll find familiar faces there, you'll find familiar information there, but it's a great sort of collection of information. It distills things down to the essential concepts. So it's a good crash course, but it's also going to include a lot of things that you already know from working here.
Yeah, and I would say if you dove into any of the all remote pages and you find it overwhelming, you like it more structured, this is a great way to see some of that same content, but with additional video and a more structured process. The other useful part for GitLab team members taking this course is that if you have sales conversations or just peer group conversations where they are thinking about transitioning to remote or want to learn more about remote, it's a lot easier to recommend and support the course if you've done it yourself. And again, the fact that it's free is pretty incredible. There's collectively thousands upon thousands of hours over years of GitLab team member expertise that have been woven into this. So it is an incredible resource, and we would encourage you to share it far and wide. Awesome. Looks like John C. has the next question.
Hey, thanks, Darren and Jessica. My question is, on slide 6, on the first bullet, you show some amazing results, hundreds of millions of impressions in a few different months this year. Just curious, what was the primary driver of those impressions? How were you able to generate such great results for GitLab?
Yeah, so I'll let Jessica take a swing at this. My answer is I think it's twofold. One was being ready before we needed to be, and the second was the COVID-fueled explosion of interest in remote work. So I'll touch a bit on the first part. So when I joined GitLab, one of the visions I had was to document, formalize, and add taxonomy to all of the great information around the processes and workflows that GitLab maintained and put forth. When I joined the company, I saw how work was happening and how informal communication was happening. And as a remote work veteran, I've worked in hybrid spaces for over 15 years. It was completely mind-blowing to me. So I wanted to document that as fast as possible. And so the strategy was build it out, document. And then when COVID happened, it turned out we were ready to mobilize on that. We were able to get a team together to build the remote playbook, incredible cross-functional effort to take the content that was there and then put it in an ebook format, which has been downloaded, I want to say over 70,000 times. Jessica may have more up-to-date numbers on that. But we were ready for that. And obviously, COVID helped accelerate the tailwinds that were already happening. When COVID happened, tens of millions of people overnight needed to know how to work well remotely. And as the months have dragged on, people have realized that you can't just trudge through this. You're going to need some actual advice, but also that there's opportunity. We have all hit this pause, this reset. And for leaders around the world, they're saying, we were probably moving in this direction anyway, with people having more freedom and flexibility to work differently. This just enables us to to pause without criticism and truly put effort into building remote infrastructure and remote fluency. So we had the information there. People go searching for it. They find it here. We have a great reputation as being a pioneer in remote work. And all of that has contributed to it.
Yeah, I'll only add to that, that we definitely saw this big rush of traffic right around the time that everything sort of changed for everyone. But some of that traffic has been sustained, although it's lowered a bit. It's still been, it's at, leveling out at a much higher level than it was previously. And I just want to underline the value of the preparation that was done. I think Sid and Darren and many people at GitLab really saw the value of developing this thought leadership in remote work and really putting the content together. So it was an investment that's paid off. And then also, our communications team has done an amazing job of getting the press, making sure that everything was being really effective. So super cross-functional, as well as just the amount of work that was put in by Darren and Sid and others to make sure that the content was ready whenever the lightning would strike.
Cool. And like, where were those impressions coming from? Like, were those mostly people visiting like the website or people visiting articles? I know, Darren, it seemed like you had like 45 interviews a day at some point. Were those, articles that, what was it? Forbes did that great piece on us. Like, is it bigger chunks coming out of those media opportunities, or is it just kind of sustained traffic through social and the website?
Yeah, great question. The bulk of it came from impressions through media interviews, but I will say we saw a 430% year-over-year increase to all remote pages that live within about.gitlab.com. So people are coming there. What we're seeing is the top of funnel becomes the media article, the Forbes, the Fortune, the TechCrunch. People see that, they're invested in it. There may be a link or two that the editor puts in there that then links over to a specific part of the handbook. The person then takes the user journey of clicking on that link. They end up in our handbook. And then, as you well know, the rabbit hole just never ends. I've received so many messages that people found us through some media article and then the next week of their life disappeared as they were just clicking around and reading and ingesting all of that. So I'll double click on Jessica's kudos to the comms team. They were able to mobilize and reach out all over the world to help us tell our story to members of the press and members of the media who for a very long time either did not know of GitLab at all or only knew about GitLab from what we did in the DevOps space. They didn't understand or know what we were pioneering in the future of work. So we've been able to open our story up to an entirely new audience, a much more mainstream audience that cares deeply about how we are architecting work and how we're paving the way on that. So yes, most of those impressions did come from external articles. When you land major tier one pieces like that, the world sees them and then they get shared on social platforms. And then a lot of that traffic does end up funneling back to about.gitlab.com. More recently, Coursera has been a fascinating experiment where a lot of people are finding us by way of Coursera. So we've stood up an avenue for them to essentially Google for how do you lead and manage a remote team. They end up on Coursera and then they find GitLab. So we are being strategic about putting our message out in as many places as possible to capture the audience wherever they end up searching. But the key to this is not to game them into coming to our site, but to truly create genuinely useful and authentic information so that once they do find it, they then want to share it and help those numbers continue to go up. Anything to add on that, Jessica?
No, I think you said it.
Awesome. Thanks,
Yeah,
John.
that was really cool to see how well prepared you all were, and also how you had a biased action in capturing that opportunity. It was great just watching those results come in real time, and looking back now a few months later, it's even more impressive.
I appreciate it, John. Thanks for the collaboration on your team as well, man. We appreciate the support. Cool. Looks like Simon is typing out his next question. So I'll let him finish typing that and then verbalize.
It's okay. I can verbalize straight away. So one of the biggest points in the remote playbook I've seen is forced work from home isn't remote work. It's like one of the top points. This is something that comes up time and time again with like friends, customers, various different people talking about, hey, they're doing remote now. And it turns out they're doing remote because they're forced forced remote. Have you got any tips to kind of highlighting why that's different, why that doesn't work, why it's not the same?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to to go in that conversation. What I've found to be most impactful, the kind of showstopper sentence is, what you're doing right now, the only benefit that aligns with true remote work is that you lost the commute. You don't get any of the other benefits of true remote work in quarantined work from home. And that usually gets people thinking, and they realize, I have had more time not commuting. But you're right, all of the other benefits aren't there. The autonomy, the freedom and flexibility to go work from your favorite coffee shop or change coffee shops 4 or 5 times a day, the ability to work a nonlinear workday and intersect outings and meetings with peers and neighbors and community members in the middle of your day. It's really difficult to do that right now. So when you start dissecting people's days and ask them, hey, are you still able to live the life you want to live? Usually the answer is no. And part of the challenge right now is just getting people to forecast beyond the middle. So there are beginnings and ends in life, and we're very much in the middle of something, but this middle is so long and so protracted and so all-consuming that it's very hard to get people to forecast beyond it. And if this is their first ever experience with remote work, they don't even have a pre-COVID baseline of how good it could be. And that's part of our role in being champions of this, is to shed light on what it can be when it's really good. And that gives people some hope and frankly, some motivation to use this time to build towards that instead of just trying to solve for right now. Because my genuine hope is that right now is not forever. We will get to a place where travel restrictions are lifted and you can regain some of that freedom and flexibility.
Yeah, I think just to add to that from a people and management perspective, the people who would have loved to set up a good remote transition didn't have the time and the ability to do so. So, we get a lot of questions like, what do our team members need to be able to do their job? And it's like, well, you need to set up an ergonomic workspace. You need to make sure they have an internet connection. All of those questions would have been answered over time if people had had time to put together a remote transition strategy, and they really didn't. So I think the team members are hurting partly because their leadership and management just didn't have time to really set things up correctly for a good transition. And I think that's been a big challenge as well.
Great, thanks.
No more questions on the agenda, Doc. Does anyone want to verbalize anything? Truly can be an AMA, like what's your favorite country to go to? I just want to talk about travel. Do you see this airplane? I haven't been able to get on enough of those.
You all do such a great job, Darren and Jessica, with all remote. The work is phenomenal. But just a quick question of what would you say you're looking forward to coming to the new year with, COVID still happening as it relates to all remote? Like how what's your approach to that and navigating it?
I'll answer that. My excitement comes from hopefully we will have been in this long enough for people to truly have time to pause and re-optimize their life for remote work. I think by next year, a lot of people that had long-term leases in homes, maybe really small apartments in large cities, that lease will run out and they'll be able to ask themselves, do I want to do anything differently? Do I want to optimize my life for better air quality, better access to nature, access to my parents, or a school that could provide a certain education to my children, anything other than a commutable distance to an office? That's what I'm really excited about. I think that's what's going to be the driving storyline on this going forward, the second and third order effects. We've almost reached saturation with the 101 level conversations on remote work. Can people still be productive? Those types of things. Important conversations, but hopefully we're kind of nearing the end on those. What's really going to be impactful is what happens when a significant amount of people start doing things drastically differently. And you see people able to engage and mobilize and change their communities and societies, largely because they're just able to be in a different place. So when that starts moving in that direction, I think a lot of positivity will come from that. And then if we get on the other side of COVID, the travel restrictions are lifted, hopefully that will be a tailwind and catalyze a lot of other change as well.
Yeah, I think for me personally, what really has invigorated me about working with a fully remote team is the global aspect of it. being exposed to people outside of my direct realm of experience and getting to know people and getting to understand their cultures and learning so many things that I could not have possibly learned without exposure to a truly global group. And I just look forward to more and more people having that experience. I think that on a very massive scale, I think that there are going to be global changes in our culture that we can look forward to. And I think most of them may be positive. But I'm excited to find out. So for me, that's truly, truly thrilling. And I can't wait for this shift to come.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Christina, it looks like you're up next.
Yes, thank you. So I've read through the remote handbook, and I really appreciate the tool stack section and encouraging companies to start simple. But I'm really curious about when you're speaking with companies and you talk about our operating model. Obviously, for remote work, a big piece of that is the handbook, right? And the fact that we use Git and DevOps to create the handbook and maintain it and make it scalable and so efficient and fast. And so I'm curious if they, if you get questions about, well, what is the lift specifically to maintain and create a handbook using Git and GitLab in terms of, what hours or, people power, that kind of thing.
Yeah, great question. For me, I always dive into how fortunate we are to use GitLab to build GitLab. GitLab, the people, use GitLab, the product, which is awesome. I definitely dive into the handbook first approach. Part of this is just wrapping people's heads around that approach before we even get into tooling. So the first battle is just wrapping your head around. You have to document a lot of things. The good news is most people have been in this remote transition long enough to now understand life does get easier when we write things down, and it's basically impossible to operate long-term when we don't. So they're acquiescing a bit on that front. Specific to GitLab, some teams are more amenable to hearing that than others. Generally, the more tech-focused companies, they kind of get it. They understand the concept of a merge request and push and pull, and they understand that it can be done well. There was recently one company we spoke with that their own takeaway from this was, whoa, GitLab uses the Git approach to actually build the culture of their company. And then that got woven into a case study, I think, within a university. But I thought that was pretty cool because I didn't say it that way, but that's what the takeaway was. On the lift front, I am conveying that it is significant. I mean, look, I think a lot of companies are going to hire ahead of remote or something similar because it's a big lift, especially if you're starting from nothing and you're trying to keep the company going. It's not like you can just pause the entire company while you build this infrastructure. And I'm seeing a lot of companies do that. The job description for each head of remote is a little different depending on the expertise that already exists in-house. Some people are focusing more on the comms aspect. Some people are focusing more on the people management aspect. But it's a big lift, and people understand that it's a big lift. And I'm always looking for ways to integrate GitLab, the product, into that conversation more. Jessica, you might have something to add on that.
Sorry, I lost my mute button. I don't have a lot to add on that. I think Darren said it pretty well. The conversation is generally focused on the need to have a handbook. And I think for people outside the open source space and without a strong understanding of Git and DevOps, it's difficult to then make that leap into using Git or GitLab for the handbook. So I think there's a long road to travel there. And it's also a question of having people understand the amount of lift that will be required to have a handbook. I think that the point to really get across when they get to that point and they start to realize how big a project it is to build and maintain a handbook is to say the best way to maintain your handbook is to democratize it and to make sure that everyone is updating it continually so it's not on one person or one team's shoulders. That's
a great point. And it also allows us to share some of the ways that GitLab works in the vein of the handbook. I will say the handbook static site editor team has been doing amazing work in making it easier for quote unquote non-technical users to see the product as something that is less a piece of software and more a facilitation of documentation. And I do love the trajectory that is. I don't know, maybe GitLab becomes a handbook tool, like a de facto handbook tool down the road. I'd be here for that. Let's say that.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you I appreciate you explaining the lift and talking about that, because that's actually kind of where I was headed, because there's an interesting use case of GitLab out there that's been, we have a case study underway it's called coursework as code, or courseware as code. And the idea basically is that all learning material is treated very similar to a handbook, with Git as the basis for creating courseware and contributing to it and building it, etc. And I'm trying to see where we can take that. And one of the barriers obviously is understanding Git and how many hours it takes to maintain it, and people. And I mean, we have our handbook channel and we have people dedicated to the handbook. So that's something I'm trying to get a sense of, is how do we measure that lift of the resources required. So I don't know if we have that in our handbook. I don't know if we have in our handbook how much it takes to keep the handbook up to date, but if anyone knows that, I would appreciate a link.
Cool. We'll document that. It's something I think we could work on. I look at some of the sales conversations where we show how much faster things can happen when you use GitLab. And so I don't see any reason why we couldn't end up doing that with a handbook if we could make the case. Cool. Looks like Josh is up next. I know we're a bit short on time, so I'll try to be quick on these.
Yeah, I think you already answered this question, but great job, Jessica and Darren. You all have been doing a lot of great work. But I was just curious, what trends do you see in the all remote space that will continue through FY21? The pandemic's raging on. This thing's not going to let up. Any big trends that you've spotted, or anything surprising to highlight?
Yeah, I think I kind of answered that up earlier, but Jessica did make me remember that I should say, I do think we'll see the democratization of remote continue to surge. I think one of the big takeaways coming out of this is it will empower people who are, people that need the flexibility the most, or the least likely to go into a job interview and say, hey, what's your stance on workplace flexibility? My hope is that going forward, these people will be empowered to do that, and it will help the people that really need it the most.
Awesome.
Jarek.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Jarek, you're up next.
Yeah, sure. So you touched on this a little bit already, but I just wanted to sort of maybe dig in a little bit to get any additional thoughts. Has there been any effort to get the message around GitLab as a tool for remote work and not just for development orgs? I know we talk about how to work remotely and do it effectively and all these things, but are we sort of tying that to the product in any way to help people looking to go remote to see GitLab as a tool to help them do that? What are your thoughts there? And are there any roadblocks with, us, being developer, focused initially, and sort of everything there? I just wanted to get your thoughts.
We did stand up a solutions page and video, which I'll link, which is awesome. And we definitely weave this conversation in. But I'll say anecdotally, the feedback I usually get is people are a bit hesitant if they aren't, especially if they're not in a software dev type of environment. They're a bit hesitant to just dive into something that has been branded and marketed as a DevOps tool to do something like that. It's not a people management tool, so it just strikes them a bit weird. So we would need to do some more awareness on that if we really wanted to dive in that and make it something that we pointed out as a specific attribute of the product. Right now, a lot of it just works really well because we're a remote team and we have to build a tool that works really well. But we do have a solutions page and I will link that. And I do think there's massive opportunity to amplify this going forward. We are supporting sales conversations much more than we ever have before, where companies are interested in GitLab, but also interested in remote, or they're using some stages of GitLab, but they want to know how we use it in our remote team, potentially to use it more and differently. So we are seeing those conversations happen and support them as much as we can.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks.
Do we have time for one more from Sid?
Thanks. I think the next thing is the horrible hybrid backlash, where companies decided to do hybrid on a whim without realizing all the consequences. How can we prepare for that?
Yeah, great point. We're working closely with Natasha and the Corp Comms department to build storylines across the org, actually, including remote work for FY21. And we're going to proactively reach out to trusted media and partners and start to lay the groundwork there for messaging going forward. We have to get ahead of it. It is coming. And I think also we can try to continue to support sales conversations. The more that we can help companies do this right, the more they'll become evangelists for us and help share the message there. Jessica, did you have anything to add on that in a few seconds?
Yeah, no, well said. I think it's another case of just getting ahead of the question before the question becomes commonly asked. So we're doing our best to do that.
Yeah, and Ted, you've done a great job of proactively seeding that message that like it is going to be hard.
So horriblehybrid.com is available, and you put up a forum. It's not called Discourse, but the Ruby on Rails forum software to maybe get people complaining.
I dig that. I don't think this will be the first GC where a site has come out of this. I feel like Michael has launched Everyone Can Contribute from something similar, so we can try to keep that going. Awesome. I think we're at time. This was phenomenal. I do see that we have additional questions in the agenda. I'll go in there and answer those async, and I will put the GitLab Solutions page as well that I just mentioned to Jarek. Thanks all for joining. Have an awesome week.